Hello and welcome to lesson 6 of rates of reaction. So today we're going to be looking at the effect of catalysts on rates of reaction. So as always, we're following the AQA specification. These are the links to the specification. If you're following a different exam board, then do please just check with your own specification that we're covering everything you need to know. So students at the school where I teach, the resources available to them on this lesson are listed here in the table, and the page numbers for the textbooks and revision guides that you might be using are also there for your benefit. So the specification outlines what students need to know, that's there, and one of the important things is it does link into what they've done previously on energy in the energy changes topic and reaction profile diagrams. Learning outcomes for the lesson are there. You can pause the video to look at those in more details as you wish. So what is a catalyst? A catalyst is a substance that increases the rate of a reaction without actually being used up itself. Okay, so we can continually use them, we can reuse them. You will have learned a little bit about catalysts as transition metals when you looked at the atomic structure and periodic table topic, and they're frequently used in industrial reactions, and we'll see why that is in a little bit. Okay, but the facts that you should know about catalysts are going to be listed just here. So you need to know that catalysts speed up the rate of reaction. Only a small amount of catalysts are needed as they don't actually get used up, so it just gets continually used. Different reactions will require different catalysts. Transition metals are often used as catalysts, so that's that middle block of the periodic table that you just saw in the starter. Enzymes are known as biological catalysts. Okay, so they speed up reactions in a biological sense. And catalysts never produce more product. They just make the same amount more quickly. So a catalyst is not going to have any effect on your yield. It just means that you get that yield produced more quickly. So here we are with our favourite question. Do all particle collisions lead to a reaction? No. We know now that particles need to collide with enough energy, which is our activation energy, the minimum amount of energy needed for particles to react. They also need to collide in the correct orientation. So we also should know by now the rate of reaction depends on two things: how frequently we can get particles to collide, and also the energy with which they're colliding. So they need that activation energy. Right, so thinking back to topic 5 and your energy changes, you will have drawn profile diagrams, and you will have drawn a profile diagram for a reaction with a catalyst, and it will have been slightly different. And what you'll have noticed is that the reaction profile with your catalyst, if you've gone back and had a look, okay, has a lower activation energy. So you can see from the diagram there in the bottom right, the reaction with the catalyst has a lower activation energy. So we know that in order to affect a rate of reaction, we either need to increase the frequency or we need to have more particles that have the activation energy. Okay, so this means by lowering the activation energy, this means that there'll be more particles moving at a speed greater than the activation energy. Because previously we said that, for example, you might need a speed of 100 in order to react, but by lowering that activation energy, so lowering that down to 70, there's going to be a greater proportion of particles in our reaction mixture that have that speed of 70, and therefore there's going to be more reaction and a faster rate. So just to note here, we haven't increased the frequency of collisions and neither have we increased the speed of particles. All we've done is lower that activation energy. So we've lowered the threshold needed for particles to react. So we haven't had any impact on the frequency or the speed of particles. What we have done is we've lowered the activation energy needed. So in A-level chemistry, if you go on and study A-level chemistry, you'll look at a graph called the Maxwell-Boltzmann distribution curve. And this, whilst it sounds like a big mouthful, it's actually really useful to look at. We'll look at it in a moment because it helps us to understand how changing conditions can impact on the rate of reaction. So here is that graph, that Maxwell-Boltzmann distribution. And what we've done, you can see on the y-axis, that's the number of molecules with any given energy. Okay, so and then we've got energy on the x-axis. So where we've got EC and EA, that's your activation energy. So EA is your normal activation energy. So you can see on this graph, this is a typical graph for any kind of reaction. The proportion of molecules that have enough energy above EA is just that red shaded area. Okay, and that's quite a small proportion of the overall area below that green curve. Okay, so everything below the green curve is all particles. And so with this little red wedge we've got at the end, that's the number of particles that have activation energy to react. So if we then lower that activation energy to EC, so we've made the level of energy needed to react a lot lower now, you can see how we've now got that blue portion and the red wedge. Okay, that is the total number of particles now that have enough energy to react. Alright, so we've got a graph here, typical sort of graph that you might see in an exam or a question, and you've got the amount of product on your y-axis and the time on the x-axis, and two lines, A and B. So which line represents the reaction using a catalyst? Good. Line A is with a catalyst and line B is without a catalyst. So using your knowledge of collision theory, we need to explain the shape of the two lines of the graph. So have a quick go at doing that now. Good. This is what you need to say. Okay, so in an exam, these are the things that you must say. A catalyst provides an alternative reaction pathway with a lower activation energy. That is the number one sentence you could say in an exam when they ask you how a catalyst affects rate of reaction. So if there was a question, how does catalyst affect rate of reaction? Your answer should be, a catalyst provides an alternative reaction pathway with a lower activation energy. There's usually 2 marks for this sort of question, and alternative reaction pathway would be 1 mark, and the second mark would be for saying that it's got a lower activation energy. So what this means is that a higher proportion of particles have sufficient energy to react. Okay, remember from the Maxwell-Boltzmann distribution graph that we just looked at, that shows you there. The frequency of effective collisions will increase because a higher proportion of particles have got the activation energy, and therefore we'll get a faster rate of reaction. The total amount of product you get at the end is still the same, so we don't change the yield stays the same, it's just the speed at which we got there has increased. Alright, so through the rest of the course you will see catalysts being used in other places, and the types of areas that you might see them. The Haber process that we'll be looking at in more detail when we come to look at changing reaction conditions. Margarine, that you'll look at more when you look at the organic side of the course. Nitric acid, again that's in the using resources, which is later on in paper 2. The contact process, Doesn't specifically come up in a particular area of the course, but it's another example of a reversible reaction and the use of a catalyst. Right, that's the end of today's lesson on catalysts. Hopefully that's going to help you answer some of the worksheets available. Coming up after this, we've got reversible reactions. So hopefully I'll see you next time for that lesson, and hopefully you're enjoying these too.